Hey, remember when we were all about robots? It didn't matter if they were good guys or bad guys, we just wanted robots going down the street waving hello. Man, that's a strange bit of nostalgia right there. Nowadays, AI can take practically every job we can do and make it so much faster. Trust me, I'm waiting for the days where I can just go, "Hey, Venus, write me a podcast script for Space Ghost Coast to Coast." It's all I want. The script you're listening to right now took me a solid week to write, mostly because of the ADHD, and I'm really bad at typing. So let's get in the Wayback Machine and look at a movie where robots had actual bodies and possessed a physical threat as we take a look at R.O.T.O.R.
25 years in the future. The ultimate weapon against crime will be the judge, jury, and executioner. And it will not be human. But here, the future has already arrived 25 years too soon.
Impossible!
Robotic.
It's okay, honey, it's a police officer.
Officer. Tactical. Operation. Research. R.O.T.O.R. Its prime directive: to judge and to execute anything that stands in its way.
The R.O.T.O.R walked through a busload of nuns to get to a jaywalker.
The perfect police officer.
It won't stop.
A prototype of what is to come. But pray, it never comes to this.
He's programming himself.
An unstoppable force. Without flesh and blood. R.O.T.O.R.
From 1987, R.O.T.O.R, starring Margaret Trigg and Richard Gueswin, this falls into the sci-fi action ripoff genre. And while this shares a lot in common with RoboCop, including filming location, story, and featuring Michael Hunter, I honestly see it more as a Terminator ripoff, in terms of style and using a lot more scary elements. Now, according to the IMDb page, there's actually a really strange theme going on here, and that's, where is everyone? Apparently, this movie had financial troubles for 2 years, so it was kind of stuck in post-production limbo. The director found the money, so he wanted to do some VO work afterwards, except either A, the actors didn't want to come in after the fact, or B, he lost track of them and had no idea how to contact them. And that's not even the worst example. There's a bit character in the movie, the Native American janitor named Shoe Boogie. I know that's racist somehow, but I can't put my finger on it. Not only does he go uncredited in the credits, no one has been able to identify who this guy even is. I mean, I understand losing paperwork, but there's no need to put another mystery into the universe. Now, I'm always curious whenever Riff Tracks put something into their essential slot, like the movie's so bad as if Riff Tracks was the company to find it and make it notable, or to bring it out into the pop culture zeitgeist. Cheesy 80s action movies are always good for a dash of weirdness, because rarely is there an original idea. It's either crazy warriors in a post-nuclear apocalypse, or super futuristic robots trying to kill everything. And as soon as a new idea hits, like RoboCop or the Terminator, there's just a swarm of ripoffs trying to get that market share as soon as they can. R.O.T.O.R is basically your run-of-the-mill ripoff movie, taking elements of both Terminator and RoboCop just without increasing any kind of budget. Now, I think this movie is supposed to take place in the future, except the main character is a scientist slash cop slash cowboy? The whole thing takes place in Texas, yet you have a lot of science talk going on, but when it comes out of a rancher, how do you take it seriously? The cowboy Cold Iron, spelled Coldyrron, is in charge of this science division of the police department, and for some reason he's trying to sell this futuristic crime-fighting robot that he doesn't have yet? At best, he might have the proof of concept. Put it like this, he would be getting kicked off of Shark Tank. I don't know if they do that on that show, but he could be the first person to get kicked off of Shark Tank. Long story longer, he gets kicked off of the R.O.T.O.R project. The eggheads in charge accidentally activate the R.O.T.O.R, who immediately starts killing people for petty crimes. Cold Iron feels guilty about the situation, but I certainly would not. That sounds like a police department slash government organization who just fired me kind of issue. You know, they find the R.O.T.O.R, tie his limbs with clotheslines, and then he explodes for some reason. There's like a scene from the beginning of the movie where Cold Iron takes out a tree stump with wire explosives, but you get a good look at them when they're around R.O.T.O.R's wrists. They're clotheslines. I think the best way to go through this movie is to take a look at each of the characters and see why this mess of a film never takes off. First, you have Cold Iron, this cowboy science cop. He looks like a mixture of Gary Busey and late 90s WWE wrestler Psycho Sid. Just a big dude, solidly tanned, a really tight curly head of hair, and just a jawline that could take out a wall. But the way he acts just screams, I really don't care for being here. His acting style seems to be that he lost his fantasy league and acting in this movie was his punishment. But I think the biggest issue is the fact that the script didn't quite think things through with his character. In the scene where he's trying to sell his future robot, there's a point where, I'm paraphrasing, but he goes, yeah, my robot could be good or bad. It's really up to whatever you need. That's not the best selling point you could go with. That's the one point that no gun manufacturer ever mentions. Our assault rifles have done amazing things for various cartels and militia groups in other countries. Isn't that good enough for your family? And then there's just this strange fight scene at a gas station. I think it was supposed to show that he was some kind of badass, except they kind of forgot to show and confirm there were actual bad guys in the situation. You, as the viewer, are outside the gas station with Cold Iron the entire time. So it's never really shown there's a holdup going on. So technically, Cold Iron is profiling the entire scene, threatening the getaway driver, concealing his weapon in some newspapers. He blasts the first hostage taker in the face, which is basically the only thing telling us there's a crime being committed. And then the second assailant basically gets spin kicked in the face by the hostage, who was probably never in any real danger. I'm sure he broke so many rules and regulations for how he handled things, but the most discipline he gets is when the real cops get there and just go, next time, you let the real cops handle this, science boy. Again, paraphrasing, but there's a certain amount of truthiness to it. So, the movie is put inside a framing device, where Cold Iron is telling the events of the movie from the police interrogation room. A spoiler alert for a movie you don't care about. As Cold Iron leaves the police station, he gets gunned down by the bureaucrat who kicked him off of his project. Like, what a way to go out! You relive the entire events of the movie that just happened a couple of hours ago, only to get 2 slugs in your chest by a character who made 1 physical appearance earlier in the movie and then was on 1 phone call, which probably wasn't even the original actor doing the lines. And it's not like they even made a big deal about a politician gunning down a scientist cop right in the police station parking lot in broad daylight. Apparently, he just gets away with straight up murder as the movie goes right into the epilogue that attempts to set up a sequel that never happens. It's a hell of a way to go, is all I'm saying. And then you have your titular R.O.T.O.R. Stands for Robotic Operations Technology. Nothing that has anything to do with being an evil robot, so we'll stick with R.O.T.O.R. Keeping with our comparisons, when it comes to your main bad guy, your heel, it has to have that iconic look for it to get over. In the original Terminator, you have Arnold in his black sunglasses and leather coat, being just a complete badass. Then, similar but different, on the face turn, you have RoboCop in a full body costume that's both futuristic, effective, memorable, same thing. And I'll even go a step further. In T2 Judgment Day, you have the T-1000 disguised as a cold and heartless police officer. A little more acting than it is looks, but you get the idea. Here in R.O.T.O.R, the best I can describe it is, your uncle was late for a Halloween party, got one piece of a costume that he relates to the character, and was just telling everyone he's the Terminator, but no one really gets it. Giant motorcycle helmet, huge concealing sunglasses, porno-esque mustache, leather coat that seems to fold over itself a few times. I just have to assume the actor was a bit chunkier than they wanted, but he was the only one who would sign on for the lowest price, so they just had to cover him up as best they could. Plus, the entire impetus of this evil robot just sucks. It's not cool, it's not clever, it's not a statement on technological advances. The previously mentioned mystery Shoe Boogie was somehow able to spark this complete goobot to life with a pair of late 1980s Walkman headphones, a switchblade comb, all touching the electric parts of this robot popsicle mold. Damn it, that's the dumbest thing to spark life from. Even orphans were born with better reasons than this. My daddy said it was the condom's fault. Still not as bad as being brought to life by a horny bit character who disappears a third way through the movie. And then, in an even stranger swing of luck, Cold Iron said it was going to be about 4 years until the R.O.T.O.R was ready to be fully operational. And yet, in the police precinct, there was his locker, his uniform, and custom-made motorcycle completely gassed up and ready to go. They didn't even call it the rotor cycle. It was just sitting there and was prepared to be there for the next 4 years. Now, you are probably wondering what kind of superpowers a technological being of the current day has. Well, he has the rotor cycle. Yes, I'm counting it. You would think he would have like a custom pistol, except it changes its shape a few times through the movie, so that's kind of iffy. He can kind of recharge himself on pure electricity by way of changing the color scheme to photonegative, even though it was never really implied he needed power. It really just seems to have an encyclopedic knowledge of crimes, to which he responds by immediately executing the person, no matter how small and petty the crime is. Literally, the first person R.O.T.O.R pulls over was just a speeder, to which R.O.T.O.R shoots in the goddamn face. And then, in an even stranger notion, leaves a calling card in the victim's hand? I've been pulled over once or twice. No cop has ever given me their business card. Granted, I could probably use some legal counsel every now and again. Something's gonna get me in trouble, I just know it. Which then brings us to our supporting lady in the film. I cannot remember for the life of me what her character's name was, so let's just call her Sarah Connor Plan B, because that's basically all her role is. She gets introduced with her boyfriend slash fiance, and they are having an argument about her working, and the dude gets all pissy about it and starts speeding. Dude, what I wouldn't give for a significant other who worked and supported the family? Shit, you would see me on Twitch a lot more. They get pulled over by the R.O.T.O.R. The dude does the white guy thing where he gets out of the car to talk to the cop, and then, as previously mentioned, gets shot in the fucking face. She speeds off in the car, and R.O.T.O.R. is now hunting her down for being an accessory to speeding, which is really stretching the logic of accessory, but he was supposed to be a bun in the oven for another 4 years, so I'll let it slide. Now, I gotta say, Sarah Connor Plan B has to be the luckiest woman in the world considering her circumstances. Solely because R.O.T.O.R. does that true robot slow walking, she gets a decent head start over him. Granted, he also has the bullshit power of seeing what happened here about 10 minutes ago, which, that's cheating somehow, talk about playing as the banker. But as she's running away, she's running into all of these distractions for R.O.T.O.R. to get caught on. She runs through the back door of a restaurant and no one says anything. She runs into a bunch of scumbags who try to fight R.O.T.O.R. She comes across a giant wooden crate in the middle of a gas station, which also has a trap door that we never see. But her biggest luck charm is basically how completely useless R.O.T.O.R. is as a super cop. Ignoring the fact that his main weakness seems to be car horns, R.O.T.O.R. had plenty of chances to grab Sarah Connor Plan B, but he forgets to bend over? Like, grabbing someone in a Ford Fiesta is really easy to do. It's a small car. But when you don't bend over to check or make eye contact, wow, do your chances drop like a comet. I mean, you're in a Ford Fiesta, you don't have any kind of chance, if you know what I mean. So those are the main characters, the ones you are stuck with throughout the movie. There's also a surprising amount of side characters who just completely disappear in certain parts of the movie. So you have the previously mentioned racist somehow shoe boogie. I will be drafting my apology letter very, very soon. You also have the lead scientist who takes over the R.O.T.O.R. project. Like once R.O.T.O.R. gets activated, he steps away from the poker table and is just gone from the movie. I mean, help out with something. Being on comms is better than just going to lunch. And then there's a lady towards the end of the movie who helps out Cold Iron in trying to take out R.O.T.O.R. I'm going to try to be nice about this, but she looks like she's the mother who wears army boots. She honestly looks like a heel from Gorgeous Ladies of Wrestling. Like, gray hair with a white streak through the middle, black tank top, army fatigues. She might have brought some guns, but they weren't used, so it never made that big of an impression. Perhaps the most interesting side character is Willard the Robot, the cheapest looking robot this side of R107. That's a deep cut reference for video game people, and no, I'm not explaining it. This was actually a public relations robot bought by the town of Addison, Texas for about 17 grand in 1986 dollars. Where that money is on this robot, I'll never know. It's made of old police headlights and aluminum ductwork. The most notable thing this robot even did was lead the Addison, Texas Christmas parade and get featured in this movie. Guess which one I would put on my resume? And again, this robot basically disappears after R.O.T.O.R. gets released. Now, I know I haven't really gotten into the nuts and bolts of the movie, mostly because it's a confusing mess of bad continuity and changing props. But the one thing I did notice that really makes this movie at least a chunk of agony is the pacing. Every scene always takes longer than it should. Like, there's a scene where the camera does this full body scan over R.O.T.O.R., except it's about 20 minutes after he gets introduced. So we know exactly who the evil, scary robot is. Why are we getting another introduction camera shot of him that probably takes 3 full minutes to get through? I think the best And or worst example of this is Cold Iron's intro scene. It really focuses on how cowboy and old-fashioned he is. But it's just a person waking up. Like, you watch a Mr. Coffee brew a cup of Java in real time. And it's not a K-cup either. It's grounds and filters all the way, baby. And then you watch him walk from his house front door to this old fence where a horse is just standing there. And you watch him walk the entire length there. And the scene is focused on the horse for some reason. And it just stands there with the most depression I've seen anything or anyone have, myself included. Cold Iron then lets the horse have a sip of his coffee, which that's just disgusting. Yes, horses are beautiful and magnificent creatures. It's not going to stick its nose in something I had to wait 20 minutes for my coffee. Overall, R.O.T.O.R has to be one of the most confusing movies I've seen in a while. Maybe not by plot points, but by character logics and logistics. It's really trying to give off Terminator or RoboCop vibes, but both the lead hero and villain do not stand out or aren't memorable enough to pull it off. The pacing is a little rough in of itself, but the confusing jumps and logic make it a little fun, I guess. I'm going to give R.O.T.O.R a 4 out of 10.
You fire me and I'll make more noise than two skeletons making love in a tin coffin, brother.